Hello everybody, this is the Lone Coder, and thank you so much for joining me on my React.js course where I'm going to teach you everything from basic React concepts like JSX and components to advanced stuff like Redux and styled components. This is the first part of this course, and in today's video I'm going to introduce you to React, and I'm going to explain what React is, how it works, and some of the benefits of using it to develop JavaScript applications. So this is going to be a very brief video, and then from here on out we're going to be learning things like JSX and how to actually make components and all the other things that are important in React. So first of all, if you don't know what React is a front-end JavaScript framework, and it's used for developing the UI of a web application. If you understand that, you understand pretty much everything there is to know about React. So the question is, why should we use React instead of vanilla JavaScript or another framework such as Svelte or Angular? Well, I highlighted 4 main reasons on this slide. The first one is that React code is declarative, and that is a way of writing code that is the opposite of imperative code. And with declarative code, you write code that says what you want to do and not how to do it. Whereas with imperative code, which is what vanilla JavaScript is, you tell the program how to do everything that you want it to do step by step. Whereas with declarative code, it's usually one line of code that accomplishes an entire task. So that makes for an extremely smooth developer experience when it comes to making React apps, and I personally enjoy React very much because of that. Second of all is the job market, the developer job market. React.js is the world's most wanted JavaScript framework, and you can see that data on the Stack Developer Survey for 2022, or not just 2022, 2021, I think, probably 2020 as well. React is an extremely popular framework, and tons of employers are needing more and more React developers, so learning React is a great choice in your career. The third major reason is speed. React apps are extremely easy to make thanks to utilities such as Create React App or CRA, and the framework is very beginner friendly, so you can make basic React apps within your first couple of hours of learning React, or maybe even sooner. And in the following videos, you're going to find out just how easy it is to make applications with React. The fourth and final major reason that I highlighted here is efficiency, because React uses something called the virtual DOM, and it's like a copy of the actual DOM. If you don't know what the DOM is, it's the document object model. It's basically JavaScript's representation of nodes on an HTML page. So each div element, for example, will be represented as a JavaScript object. And the reason React uses a virtual DOM is because it enables it to batch updates to the DOM. So every web application has state, which is the set of data that it needs to function. Almost every application shows the user some data, and that's stored in the state. And whenever there are updates to the state in a React application, React is able to use the virtual DOM to determine the best way to batch those updates together and push them to the real DOM. So the net result of that is that React apps are extremely efficient and fast, and there's almost no delay between state updates and when those updates show on the web page. So now that we know why we are going to be learning React, let's talk about the things you should know before you start learning React. First of all, you should know the basics of JavaScript. That goes from making variables, primitive data types, everything that you would learn in a basic JavaScript course. I highly recommend using Codecademy if you do not know JavaScript, so feel free to check out the Learn JavaScript course on Codecademy so you can get up to speed before learning React. Second of all, you should know ES6 syntax, and in most JavaScript courses, at least the ones that have been created since the ES6 update came out, this will be included inside of any JavaScript course. But if you need to look things up individually, it's going to include things like the import and export syntax for modules, arrow functions, and the let and const syntax for making variables. Third, you're going to need to understand HTML and CSS, and to be specific, HTML5 and CSS3, which are the most updated versions. Finally, you should have some familiarity with using Bash and the terminal. And if you're not sure what that means, a terminal is basically just another way to perform the tasks on your computer that you would normally do with a user interface. For example, creating, deleting, moving files, that kind of thing, running programs, anything like that can also be done through a terminal. And for web developers, we tend to use the terminal a lot more than the user interface, and there are several reasons for that, which I'm not going to go into right now, but I will include a link in the description or resources, depending on whether you're on YouTube or Udemy, and that'll link to an article that I wrote on reasons that you should learn Bash and the terminal. So we're going to be using the terminal for things like installing React, running our React app, so it's good to be familiar with it. So now more about React itself. The central concept of React is something called a component, and it's basically just a piece of the UI So we take a user interface that we want to develop, and then we split it into a ton of smaller pieces. Some pieces are large and contain other pieces, whereas others are more self-contained. And we call each of these pieces a component. So what are components? Number one, components are just JavaScript functions, and that is extremely important to remember. React components are JavaScript functions that return JSX code, and that's it. We're going to go into what JSX is later on in this course, but essentially, as you can see on number 2, JSX is a hybrid language, a mix of JavaScript and HTML. It stands for JavaScript XML. XML is extended markup language. It's very similar to HTML, and that is the language that we are going to be writing our user interface in. So each component is basically just a piece of HTML that we are going to insert into the UI. And like I said, they are just JavaScript functions. So if you understand JavaScript functions, then you shouldn't be confused at all. Number 3, components are reusable UI elements. So React components are reusable. That means you can create a component once and reuse it as many times as you need. And this is one of the many things that makes developing a web application with React extremely efficient, because you can just make a component once, and if it's a common one, then you're definitely going to want to turn a piece of the UI into a component so that you can use it however many times you want, whether it's twice or 100 times. So we are going to be doing tons of things with components throughout this course. React is essentially just a library that helps you make components. So the last thing I want to cover in this introduction video is some other technologies that I'm going to cover in this course, because React is great, but there are certain things that we want to do with our React apps that we need to pull in third-party libraries to do. And the first of those is Redux. It's not going to be easy to understand what Redux does right now if you're a beginner to React, but it's what's called a state management library, and that's because data flow, the way information gets passed to and from components, it can become very complex in React, sometimes overly complex, and Redux aims to solve this problem. It essentially just makes a central store of data that all the components can call and get the state from. But don't worry about that right now. Later on in this course, we'll go into that in detail. But the second library that we're going to be using is called style components. And it says, applying complex styles to React components is difficult and prone to name collisions. And by name collisions, I mean class names in your HTML or JSX markup. You know, when you write CSS, you're going to have tons and tons of different classes and class names, and they're going to be used for different styles. And it's really sometimes difficult to come up with unique class names, and so styled components helps to solve this problem. Styled components is what's called a CSS and JS library, and this may sound weird, but it uses JavaScript syntax and JavaScript objects to apply CSS styles to components. Again, don't worry about that right now, we'll go into it in detail. But the third major technology that we're going to be going into besides React is React Router. And that's because React apps are by default single page applications, or SPAs, and that means that as you navigate through the app, the page is never going to refresh. You know, on normal websites, when you click on a link, the page will refresh and it'll bring up the new web page. That does not happen in React because it is a single page application. But we can get around this with React Router because it allows you to set up client-side routing. And with client-side routing, the page will still not refresh, but you can still emulate normal server-side routing. So don't worry about any of these technologies right now. I'm just trying to show you the kind of things we're going to go into later on in this course when we've already learned the basics of React. So the whole point of this video is just to give you an idea of how React works and the kind of things we're going to be learning in this course. We're going to be going into everything from, like I said, JSX, functional components, class-based components, and I don't mean to overwhelm you because you'll find that as you learn it, it's really not that difficult to remember as long as you practice regularly with it. So as a conclusion to this video, React is often the best choice for modern application development. It is fast, efficient, stable, and offers a great developer experience. I've been developing applications with React for a while now, and I've had no problems with it. I've actually been having a great time developing with React. There's pretty much nothing to regret about learning React. It's a very powerful framework, and you can use it to develop almost any application you can dream up. So that concludes today's very brief video. I was just trying to introduce you to this course and give you an idea of what we're going to be doing. Next up, I'm going to be showing you how to create your very first React app using a very simple command line utility called Create React App. The name is pretty self-explanatory, so I hope you're looking forward to that. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.